we go. Welcome back to Hardball. Dick Cheney's accusation that President Obama is waffling on Afghanistan has received plenty of pushback from Democrats, and his comments aren't exactly being defended by Republicans either. Here's what Senator John McCain said when asked if he agreed with Cheney's charge that the White House is dithering. Let's listen.
I wouldn't use that language. The Vice President of the United States is very well credentialed. He has a long history of service to the country. He has the right to speak out, in my view, however he wants to. Having said that, I think we should, as much as possible, say, and our message is, we want this strategy and we want to support the President and unite the country behind it.
I don't believe I heard you say whether you thought that was helpful or unhelpful.
I don't know. I would leave that to others to judge, really.
Wow. Willie Brown's the former mayor of San Francisco, and, of course, the former leader of the Speaker of the Assembly in California. And Ron Christie served as a deputy assistant to former Vice President Cheney himself. First of all, Mayor Brown, I want to ask you about this word. The language used by Cheney is very dismissive. Dithering, waffling, really putting down the president's decision-making with regard to whether we spend more blood and treasure over in Afghanistan. In fact, meeting McChrystal's call for 40,000 more troops. What do you make of the Cheney attacks and the way Republicans are responding to it?
Well, I think it's typical of Vice President Cheney. He's always been pretty much hostile to whatever Mr. Obama was about in the Obama administration. In addition thereto, Mr. Cheney doesn't believe, I don't think, in the great deliberative process that Mr. Obama and his administration are now going through with reference to Afghanistan. After all, the Republicans and Mr. Cheney had the opportunity to do those deliberations when it came to the question of Afghanistan as well as Iraq. They didn't do it, and as a result of that, we went through the horror of that experience. Mr. Obama doesn't want that to repeat it, and he is therefore going to take his time. He's going to be respectful of what his people on the ground say, including the man whom he has designated and appointed. But he knows, with the absence of infrastructure in Afghanistan, with the roads not being there, with education not being there, with none of the things that we take for granted in this country being there, including the distribution of energy, it's going to be very difficult to do anything other than, in fact, respond in a way that will allow this country to, in fact, be in a survival mode once this war is over.
Ron Christie, your views of the Vice President's language and the way that Republicans like George F. Will, McCain, and even Orrin Hatch have responded to it rather negatively.
Well, Chris, those aren't words that I would use to discuss the president's deliberation process, but I certainly understand where the vice president's coming from. As I think we're all very well aware, on March 27th of this year, President Obama outlined a very detailed counterinsurgency strategy where he discussed toppling the Taliban, making sure that there was no resurgence of the Taliban, as well as eliminating al-Qaeda. Then you fast forward to this past August, and the president again reiterated his earlier position adopted this past March. And now you have a president, Chris, who has been sitting on a report from his general, as the mayor said, listening to the man on the field. The general in the field, General McChrystal, has recommended a troop surge of up to 40,000 troops to define victory in Afghanistan. And I think that there are many in the Republican Party, and myself included, who look and say if the president has time to fly to Copenhagen, the president has time to go on David Letterman, why does he only have time to meet with his general on the ground only twice for about the span of an hour? I think Republicans and Democrats in the country are wondering, is this White House giving this Afghanistan conflict resolution the time and attention it deserves?
Well, you know, when Dick Cheney was asked why he took 4 or 5 deferments during the Vietnam War, which he supported wholeheartedly, he said he had other priorities. So I'd be careful about going after the issue of priorities with Dick Cheney.
Well, Chris, deferments in the Vietnam War have nothing to do with the present case. I think all Americans, and I think Senator McCain had it absolutely right, this is something that shouldn't be political, Chris. No. This should be the president being very deliberate, very methodical, very thoughtful, not getting into these political
Here's George Will, who's on your side politically. Let me go. I'm going to offer this up to the mayor here. He said a bit of dithering might have been in order before we went into Iraq. Your thoughts, Mr. Mayor.
There is no question serious consideration should have been given by the Bush administration, with Mr. Cheney dominating in that administration on matters involving national security. That did not happen. Mr. Obama is doing exactly what the American people would have him do. He's doing exactly what a majority of the members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, would have him do. Be certain. Make sure you don't put lives at risk. You don't involve this country in another protracted war where there's absolutely no upside to it whatsoever. Clearly, he does not wish the Taliban, under any circumstances, to gain hold and control Afghanistan. But after all, Pakistan is next door. That's an even greater threat.
Sure.
And so in the deliberations, you've got to put the two together. You can't separate them. That's not something Mr. Cheney obviously is willing to do.
But here is George Will speaking in his own words yesterday on This Week.
A bit of dithering might have been in order before we went into Iraq in pursuit of non-existent weapons of mass destruction. So from a representative of the Bush administration to accuse someone of taking too much time is missing the point. We have much more to fear in this town from hasty than from slow government action.
Ryan?
Well, Chris, again, I look at back in the United Nations Security Council. I would hardly say that the United States could have done a little bit more dithering. The United States, with over 40 nations, a coalition of the willing, if you will, demanded that Iraq disclose its weapons of mass destruction. The Clinton administration believed that they had those weapons of mass destruction, and we acted not only to preserve the integrity of the United States, but our allies in the region. So to suggest now, and with all due respect to George Will, that some more dithering was involved, I think the Iranian government was dithering around with the world community, and we acted to preserve the peace.
Well, George, I think you got to be careful here about decisions that lead to war and decisions that don't. Bill Clinton, whatever you want to say about him, did not take us into war because of what he discovered, whereas this recent president, George W. Bush, and Dick Cheney took us into war with the information they had. So they acted rather quickly, you could argue, whereas you could argue that Clinton may have thought along those lines. He certainly didn't take us to war, which is the decisive point, isn't it, Mr. Mayor?
There's no question Mr. Clinton did not take us into war, and I think George Will is absolutely correct. If there had been the kind of serious attention that is now being given to what happens in Afghanistan as it relates to Iraq, we clearly would not have had General Powell standing before the UN, given that awful performance based on all of that conjured up so-called evidence. The Congress would have examined it, and we would not have been in Iraq the way in which we were in Iraq. There's just no question about it. So take your time, Barack Obama. Take your time, all of the members of the Senate. Make sure that there is factual support for whatever decision you finally make. And let me also say, I think General McChrystal will say the same thing.
Hey, Chris, with all due respect to the mayor of my beloved hometown and a man who I respect a lot, I find it very interesting the Democrats have this hindsight 2020 that they look at everything with this crystal clarity. Once again, it was not the United States acting alone. It was the United Nations Security Council. It was Great Britain. It was our allies in Spain from all across the globe who not only perceived a threat that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction, but he had every intent and ability to use them. That's in large measure why the United States and the coalition went to war. It was not George Bush acting recklessly. I do hope that President Obama does take the time that he needs to deliberate and act properly, not politically, as it comes to committing more American men and women to the battlefield.
Well, I think there's a larger point here. That's the mindset of Dick Cheney. The American people rejected it in the past 2 elections. They may reject it again. We'll see. Thank you very much, Willie Brown. Thank you, Ron Christie.